Welcome to Surviving the Phuckery, where we're just trying to survive all the fuckery that's going on in the world today. In today's video, both black and white South Africans speak out against President Trump, who appears to have doubled down on Elon's lie that the white South African farmers are the victims of genocide, even after the very images he used during his meeting with South African President Ramaphosa were proven to be false. Now that being said, enjoy.
Full-time in the Beninging.
Cut! Optimus, one more time!
In the Beninging.
Cut! It's beginning! Beginning!
Before time in the Beninging. Beninging.
Cut! Where you going?
I go home now, and I will start from Beninging again.
What disturbs me more than the policy that you call a policy is the rationale for the policy. The rationale for the policy. You set out 4 principles that you adhere to, and then and I will go over them in a moment. Then you say on page 14, we must not become part of South Africa's problem. We must remain part of their solution. We must not aim to impose ourselves, our solutions, our favorites in South Africa. Damn it, we have favorites in South Africa. The favorites in South Africa are the people who are being repressed by that ugly white regime. We have favorites. Our loyalty is not to South Africa, it's to South Africans. And the South Africans are majority black, and they are being excoriated. It is not to some stupid puppet government over there. It is not to the Afrikaners regime. We have no loyalty to them.
While I'm waiting for your fucking response, are you just not going to say anything, dumbass?
I want to ask you about South African refugees. Dozens of Afrikaners who claim discrimination in their home country are heading to the United States, where your administration is going to welcome them as refugees. Now, this comes as you've halted virtually all refugee admissions for people fleeing famine and war from countries like Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why are you creating an expedited path into the country for Afrikaners but not others?
Because they're being killed.
What?
It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me, but white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
So, let's just bring the South Afrikaners over here. I guess the cats who believed wholeheartedly in apartheid and was a part of apartheid was the people, the descendants of all the people in apartheid, the ones who supported the segregation and the mistreatment of the black folks in the land that they came over and stole. And then Trump want to try to paint a picture like they're being killed and their land's being stole. Like, first off, it was never their land, and second off, they're not being killed over there. There's no mass murderings going on. South African governments proved it. Other UN governments have proved it, that it's not happening. Trump's falsifying that shit just to try to okay the fact that he wants to bring over Elon Musk people. And you guys questioning who the fuck is running our country. It's Elon, bro. Like, this is just wild. It's wild. Kick out all the brown people. Kick out all the people of color, the Muslims. And let's bring in the South African and apartheid motherfucking supporters.
Wait, so Elon Musk reported South Africa to Donald Trump?
What?
Only recently, Trump signed an executive order suspending U.S. foreign development aid for 90 days. And now he has fully suspended U.S. aid to South Africa, citing concerns over land expropriation and treatment of certain groups. But wait, wasn't there a scandal in the 70s with Trump and the U.S. Department of Justice due to a violation of the Fair Housing Act? But I digress. You see why history is so important? On this day, February 5, 1955, over 60,000 black South Africans were thrown out of their homes in Johannesburg under a law called the Group Areas Act. Let's go to Timbuktu. Yes. Once upon an African time, the Dutch arrived in South Africa with belief that whatever they saw they could own. The people who had lived there for centuries were forced off their own land. By 1913, it was official. The Natives Land Act was passed that black South Africans could only own 7% of the land. By the time apartheid fell in 1994, nearly 90% of the land was still in the hands of white South Africans, who made up less than 10% of the population. The new government under Nelson Mandela promised land reform to return stolen land, but decades passed and very little changed. Cyril Ramaphosa has signed a new law, a law that allows the government to take back land without paying compensation. Elon Musk, a billionaire born in South Africa, has criticized the law, calling it openly racist. Oh boy. Some argue that if a land is taken from white farmers, it could cause economic collapse, just as it did in Zimbabwe in the early 2000s. And some are saying history is history and people should move on. But can you move on from something that still exists? The land is still there. The inequalities are still there. The consequences of apartheid are still visible in every township, every poor village, every wealthy estate. If history does not matter, why does the land still belong to the same families who took it generations ago? And if compensation must be given for the land being taken today, then should there not also be compensation for the land that was taken yesterday? This is not just about South Africa. This is about who controls Africa's wealth. I want to say to African leaders, you don't have to keep cowering to threats from foreign powers. How is it that a continent so rich in land, minerals, oil, even human talent still gets threatened with aid? How is it that Africa, the wealthiest continent in resources, remains the poorest in power? When will African governments stop managing poverty and start building prosperity? When will you stop begging for what you already own? Until Africa stands on its own feet, it will always be treated like a child at the world's table, waiting for permission to eat. But Africa is not a child. Africa is the table, and it is time for its leaders to start acting like it.
AfriForum has finally gotten their way. Or have they? They've managed to convince Donald Trump that there's a white genocide happening in South Africa, land grabs are going to happen under the new land expropriation policy, all of which are verifiably untrue. However, they have now poked the bear being Donald Trump, who has now posted on his Truth social media that he is going to take away all funding from South Africa, all trade deals, all funding, all aid, to punish us for this land expropriation bill, which has nothing to do with land grabs, just to be clear. Now AfriForum is freaking out because if Trump does that, if he takes away things like AGOA and other things that make our trading with America easier, do you know who suffers? White businesses. They're the ones who suffer, not the kind of ANC politicians that AfriForum was trying to get a dig at. So now AfriForum is coming out and saying they are going to lobby Donald Trump again, this time to say, no, please don't punish the people of South Africa, just the individual politicians. Can you just sanction them? It is so clearly a political play. And of course Trump fell for it. And of course it's backfired for AfriForum. And it's all farcical if it wasn't for the fact that it has real impacts and effects on us ordinary South Africans, who, by the way, are not out here killing white people in the street.
Hey lovely people, and particularly a quick word to my American friends who might be tempted to believe what Donald Trump is saying about South Africa, my home country, where I happen to be right now. Him and Elon Musk are racist twats who have no fucking idea what they're talking about. Because what they're doing is taking the word of a fringe racist group called AfriForum and other disaffected whites, disgruntled by the end of apartheid, feeling hard done by, and much like the Israelis, victimizing themselves when they are not victims at all. Bitching about how, land redistribution is racist against whites. These are such ignorant provocateurs, and it's going to backfire on them. South Africans' majority, the black majority, and it's a multiracial, multi-tribal society now, only own a tiny proportion of the land versus the size of their population. And while white South Africans make up 7% of the population, more or less, they own about 70% of the decent land. And so the redistribution of land is to address past inequities, and the vast majority of South Africans agree and understand why that's happening and that it's a good thing. It's also under a very strict mechanism. Now, not everyone agrees, of course, with the mechanism, but the principle is what racists like Musk and Trump are railing against here on behalf of a bunch of assholes who equate equality with oppression, because for so many years, decades and decades of the apartheid era, they were the oppressor. And as we know, whenever the oppressor looks at something like equality, it suddenly becomes oppression of him. So fuck Elon Musk, fuck these idiots from AfriForum. You probably know nothing about them, but this is a bunch of, the equivalent of your kind of Proud Boys, hanging on to some past that never actually existed, and a past in which the vast majority of people in this country were oppressed, suppressed, and treated much like, fortunately not quite as badly as the Israelis treat the Palestinians. So this whole railing against South Africa, I'm going to add one more point. South Africans on the whole, all of us, white, black, Indian, colored, which is not a term, is a specific term for those of you who might get offended by that, a specific racial group. We are very, very resilient people. As a country, we have gone through a great deal, both in terms of the early part and then the transition from the apartheid era to genuine multicultural democracy. And whatever Trump throws at us, we can handle it, because we've been through far, far worse in our history. And my hope is that South Africans all turn around with one voice and tell Trump to fuck off with his sanctions and his fucking withdrawal of aid and his tariffs and all of this stuff, because we can live through it. What I'm not sure about is whether Americans can, because for the most part, all the stuff that Vivek Ramaswamy said recently about Americans being soft, not prepared to put in the hard graft, and all this stuff, I tell you, for the experience of most foreigners is true. Now, it's not true of every American I know. Some of them are the most hard-working, wonderful people in the world. But as a general principle, South Africans are far more resilient and able to withstand this kind of bullshit authoritarian pressure than any American population. So, to my fellow South Africans, let's stick this out. Let's stick up the middle finger to Trump, and particularly to Elon Musk, because we know from his background that he left South Africa in the apartheid era and retains the racist bullshit that's motivating these people like Thiel. And now that I'm in South Africa, I'm seeing their awesome, ridiculous tweets. Fuck those guys as well.
It's a certain amount of people which wants to create a nation of unity. And then there's us, the Boers. We don't take part in this. And we're not going to. And we're not going to go away. And we're the rightful owners of this land. So...
Make you don't know nothing, man. You know what you are? EP, aka Enemy of Progress.
We have some white South Africans or Afrikaans refugees going to the US.
Refugee of what? Your life is incredible. What are you talking about?
There is a white genocide in South Africa.
White South Africans see themselves as the victims. It just doesn't make sense.
You as a South African know very well the situation on the ground. Can you tell me what's your feeling from your point of view?
This white South African refugee story is the dumbest I've ever heard. So this didn't start now. Right back in 2016, during Trump's first presidency, a bunch of white South Africans went to the White House and had a meeting with Trump. And they basically said, hey, we are being systematically targeted by this black population because of our ethnicity, and we are experiencing a genocide. And Trump put out some tweets right back then. But today, he's taking the most drastic actions. Trump announced that they would be welcoming white South Africans as refugees escaping this white genocide that's allegedly taking place in South Africa. So let's look at what's actually happening. We have to start with history, right? South Africa in 1913, I'm going to take you back a little bit, had something called the Native Land Act. In 1913, if you were black in South Africa, you were removed of all of your land, and it gets worse. You were later also removed of your nationality. You were no longer, you were a black South African, and they're like, hey, you're not South African anymore. And all of that was given to white people. All the land was stolen from a population of 50 million people and given to white people. Now let's jump forward to 1994. South Africa celebrates democracy. Nelson Mandela is free, the first black South African elected president. And it's the most exciting thing ever, right? While black South Africans got their right to vote and their freedom to go to the same schools potentially and to walk on the same sidewalks and all these incredibly evil measures that apartheid had maintained, what they didn't get back was the land. So today, in 2025, white people in South Africa make up less than 20% of the population. But they own more than 80% of the land. A tiny minority of white people own the vast majority of the country. I'm talking farms, I'm talking mining, I'm talking about a black native population that for the most part are squatting in their own land. They don't even own the land below their feet. They're squatting, often illegally. Often the police and authorities come and say, you don't live here, you gotta move on. They have nowhere to go. And it's this impossible situation where you're like, okay, well, what do you do where 80% of the country is owned by white people and they make up 20% of the population? Do you buy that land back? It would be, no country in the world could afford to do that, to buy back 80% of their country. Do you take that land back? It would scare away foreign investors. They'd be like, oh my God, South Africa is nationalizing just like Zimbabwe did under Robert Mugabe, right? So you can't take it back and you can't buy it back. So there's been a process of like basically willing buyer, willing seller, where the government are trying in part to redistribute wealth to black South Africans through the process of trying to buy it back. So that's the first thing to understand.
Sounds very genocidal to me.
Yeah, it's madness to call this a genocide. What, genocide where you own the entire country? And like, you know, there are still today, if I'm in Cape Town and many parts of South Africa, there are still many restaurants and coffee shops and clubs that I'll go to where I'm the only person of color who's not working there. There is still a slave-master relationship where white people control that economy so tightly and are so affluent and are so privileged for the most part. Okay, so there's this huge, that just sets the scene to say, like, yeah, what refugee of what? Your life is incredible. What are you talking about? The second bit is then, these white farmers are showing images to Trump and to those that care to listen and saying, look at these images. And these images are horrific, right? They show farm murders. People that are getting attacked on these properties. And they're saying, we are being attacked because we are white. There's a few things to say there. One, when you look at the statistics, when you look at the actual numbers in South Africa, according to official reports from the police, firstly, white people are not disproportionately impacted by violent crime. In fact, black South Africans experience the most murders. So there's not this disconnect where like white people are disproportionately getting murdered more than anybody else as a percentage. It's just not true. What is the case is they often have these massive plots of land. They often live on these farm properties with their wine farms and all this luxury. And they are often very easy targets in a very, very unequal society where the poor are incredibly poor, the wealthy are incredibly wealthy, and you've got these really rich pockets of people. Also, when you look at a lot of these farm murders, which again are horrific, I know, I was a journalist, I went out to some of these farm scenes, I saw the dead bodies. When you look at some of these murders, you often see that it very often emanated from a dispute between owner of a farm and a staff member, right? But this is not the story that's being fed. The story that's being told is like there's this white community that are fighting for their lives, that are defending themselves from a black population that want blood. The thing is, South Africa is actually the complete opposite story. That's the saddest part about this whole thing. When South Africa won its democracy in '94, the whole international media flew to South Africa. All the media organizations expecting a bloodbath. They were expecting a black population that had been subjugated for over, 100 years to uprise and violently chuck out the Europeans, like in Mozambique, where Portuguese were chucked out basically in 48 hours, or they were expecting a civil war. And neither of those things happened. South Africa is a global example of what Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu called the Rainbow Nation, of peaceful coexistence, of forgiveness. South Africa had truth and reconciliation committees where white people who were responsible for apartheid and had committed sometimes awful crimes could share their truth and be forgiven. And the country moved on. And it's just really sad to see a country that has been so patient and so kind. And to be honest, the black population have tolerated so much, right? To go this many years where they still don't own their own country. And then to be told, oh, you're the genocidal one. You're the one. It's just not true. And it really just stems from a white superiority complex. It is this group of, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, who have this victim mentality. The annoying part is in South Africa, is white South Africans see themselves as the victims. And if you visit there and see the lives that they live, it just doesn't make sense. One of the other ways they view themselves as victims is white South Africans often hate what's called affirmative action and black economic empowerment.
You should be questioning why are there racist laws in South Africa? That's the first problem. That's what you should be attacking. It's improper for there to be racist laws in South Africa. The whole idea with what Nelson Mandela, who was a great man, proposed was that all races should be on an equal footing in South Africa. That's the right thing to do, not to replace one set of racist laws with another set of racist laws, which is utterly wrong and improper. So that's the deal, that all races should be treated equally, and there should be no preference given to one or the other. Whereas there are now 140 laws in South Africa that give that basically give strong preference to if you're a black South African and not otherwise. And so now I'm in this absurd situation where I was born in South Africa but cannot get a license to operate in Starlink because I'm not black.
Look at me. Look at me in the windows to my soul. Shut the fuck up. Shut all the way the fuck up until you reach the top of Shut Fuck Mountain where there are no more fuck-ups to shut.
This is a remarkable sort of measure of how the world has turned, that a nostalgic product of apartheid South Africa, Elon Musk, whose grandparents moved there after the Second World War. They were in the Canadian Nazi Party, his maternal grandparents. They moved to apartheid South Africa to be with people with whom they felt at home. A family legacy that he's not repudiated, that his mother very much carries on. If you've sort of caught her at all on TV, she turns up both sides of the Atlantic. She's a alt-right sort of unapologetic exponent of what her son is also pushing, and his algorithm is also promoting on his social media site. And this is far-right politics, hatred of multiculturalism. What he said to the AFD rally that he addressed, in that sort of Orwellian big screen, his face comes up, and he says you should no longer feel guilt for what your grandparents or great-grandparents did. It was very clear what he was talking about in a speech that attacks immigration and multiculturalism. The idea that different races cannot live together. This is not something we should just dismiss as the sort of bloviation or the trolling of a sort of Silicon Valley tycoon. This is the sort of shadow president of the United States.
How much more is the house gonna let this motherfucker do? He violated HIPAA, sold all our identities too. Elon, take your ass back to Africa.
This is the BS we talking about right here. Look at it. Elon Musk, Trump, they're trying to corner, they're just playing all over our face, y'all. Elon Musk claims there's a white genocide underway because them people in South Africa want the land back. The people took the land on some muscle shit back in the past. Now they want the land back. So guess what Trump doing? So if you don't know by now, Trump is moving white Afrikaners to America. Yeah, executive order hosts the U.S. aid to South Africa. U.S. order hosts the U.S. aid to South Africa. I say again, 30% tariffs imposed on South Africa. Yesterday they just came to D.C. and they setting up in Dallas. These people had 70% of land in South Africa and they only made up 7%. Why did you just move all these brown people out? We'll move all these people in talking about they racist to them. If it's like that, we'll be getting everything back all over the world. And these people are from Dutch. They are descendants from Dutch. They need to be back on a plane to Europe. Yeah, now. So y'all check y'all president's motives. Y'all voted for him, so this is what the fuck you got. Yeah.
Africans coming here to Alabama getting free housing. I ain't paying my tax dollars for no Africans to come here and live for free. Round up the boys and let's go find these houses.
No, man, it's the farmers that Trump saved from the genocide in South Africa.
Oh, okay. Whew. Got flustered for a minute, man. Why didn't you say so? Well, now they here in the South. If I was them, I wouldn't keep calling myself no African or Afrikaner, whatever they call themselves. I agree with you there, because I don't know how the African Americans are going to think about that. Not that I care too much what they think. I just don't want to be calling somebody who looked like me an African, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I know what you're saying, brother, because I don't either. Call me anything you want, but don't call me no African.
There are no Afrikaners who have been killed here in South Africa. It's not true. And there are no 49 Afrikaners who left South Africa. You all know that. It's a fiction. It's drama. You know, America with drama is #1. That thing is Movango. I don't know what is Movango in Africa. It's just a drama. I believe they landed and then they waited for cameras, took them pictures. The next flight back to South Africa. If those people are farmers, it means there are 49 farms available. Why are we not expropriating them? Because they've abandoned them. But why is the media not telling us? Because they say these are farmers. Why is the media, through its own investigation, say to us, this picture you see is a farmer at this. They are not farmers. There is no one who left farming here in South Africa. I suspect that those whites were these ones who were looking after cars at the parking lot. They were attending to cars and they went to fetch them there. They can't live. They will never live the kind of life they live here in South Africa, anywhere else. Even if you live here as a millionaire and you go to USA, your money gets reduced to nothing. So no American or Afrikaner will leave South Africa for America. It's not true. Our country, there's no killing of white people. We're not killing white people. We're demanding our land. We're saying, let's share this land. Let's all work the land. And if that is a crime, it's a crime we're prepared to commit. Because we can't, when we're asking for food, and say, no, you're committing crime by asking. We're having a robust debate on land in South Africa. And that must never be used to silence us by America.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Do you think I should dare dilute these words? But without doing or saying anything, you know, yes. Every time our president goes to the West, we worry if he's not going to fetch new instructions, new tactics, and new orders of how to steal and siphon our minds, our wealth, and how to abuse our labor.
We do not have a genocide in South Africa.
This South African farmer wants to set the record straight. He wrote an open letter to US President Donald Trump after Trump offered Afrikaner farmers refugee status. The first group of 59 Afrikaners traveled to the US in early May. It has raised questions about why a group of white South Africans of Dutch and French descent are being granted refugee status when the Trump administration has stopped all other refugee programs. De Jager represents a large farmer organization which has members across South Africa. He says while it's true that farm murders are a major problem, Trump hasn't got the facts straight.
I wrote the letter to Trump because I feared that he might have a misunderstanding of what is going on here. We thanked him for having sympathy with our cause, but we also said, rather help us to make things better here. Help us to, within our lifetime, fix the problems we have here. And it's not only a race thing. Black farmers have similar problems too, and we need those problems also to be attended to.
Trump's genocide claims are a result of brutal attacks on farmers in South Africa. Most of the murders happened during armed robberies. There's a large memorial at Nampo, South Africa's largest farming expo, dedicated to farm murders. It contains around 2,800 names, going as far back as the 1970s. One thing that stands out about this event is the diversity. We've seen many Afrikaners, but we've also seen many black people in attendance. This memorial includes the names of black farmers who were victims of farm murders, debunking the idea that it's a crime that only affects white people. And those we spoke to say while they are concerned about farm murders, they don't want to leave South Africa.
If people want to do it, I think it's a good idea. It gives them an option out if they want. But I personally would not do it. This is my country. as, and that is something that Mandela fought for, is for freedom for all.
I cannot really say there's a genocide in South Africa. The only thing that is happening is it's a crime in general. You know, in every country, in every places, we do have crimes, irrespective of race, you know. So I think the genocide issue is exaggeration.
To the 50 Afrikaners who fled to the US, calling themselves refugees, you are not refugees. You are just a case study of white flight dressed up as martyrdom. You're not escaping violence, you're escaping equality. South Africa didn't chase you away. You ran. Yes, South Africa is one of the most violent countries in the world. Yes, brutality exists. But let's be honest, violence affects all communities, not just white farmers. Black, colored, Indian, and yes, white people are all targets of a national crime crisis. What we have is a breakdown in safety, not a white genocide. This is not ethnic cleansing, it's criminal collapse, and running to the US won't fix it. You are part of a 7% minority, but somehow still manages to control over 70% of the wealth. That is not persecution, that's privilege on a guilt trip. And let's be real, if we tried to relocate just half of the Afrikaans population, it would take decades, billions in logistics, and you'd still end up culturally homeless in a country that don't want your apartheid baggage. You're not brave, you're not victims. You're scared of a world where you don't get to be in charge, and that makes the rest of the Afrikaans community cringe, because you make us look weak. South Africa is broken, and it's our problem to solve. So if you don't have the spine to do so, stay gone.
Good evening. Thank you as always for your kindness and for your insights. Donald Trump, as always, with respect. White South Africans are not being subjected to genocide, and your claim that they are is not only racial bigotry, it's naked white supremacy. Because Donald Trump, since taking office, you made it clear that our country, the fabric of which is undeniably stronger, richer, and better because of immigrants, you made it clear that our country will no longer accept migrants from any part of the world except for the 59 white South Africans who last week you welcomed with open arms. Donald Trump, you know well that from 1948 to 1994, there was a system in place across South Africa called apartheid, a system that models what systemic racism is, a system in which the 90% of black South Africans were not only treated as second-class citizens, not only denied basic rights, not only not allowed to live in their ancestral homelands, not only regularly submitted to racial violence by the state, but forced to live in townships. Donald Trump, today, 30 years after apartheid ended, the 7% of white South Africans control 72% of the farmland. That doesn't sound like discrimination. That doesn't sound like oppression, and it's certainly not genocide. Donald Trump, you need to understand, there are millions upon millions of your fellow citizens who will never tolerate racial bigotry or white supremacy from being normalized.
White people with less than $100,000 and that own a red hat. Make sense of this for me. America first, but make sense of this for me. The front half of a senator that's running this country, there's a good joke about Elon being in the back half with a puppet, is currently expediting refugees from South Africa to America with short and long-term housing while you're still poor. Before they helped you, like anybody with less than 100 grand is poor. You're still poor. I know you can, there's different levels. You're still in the group that is not their friend circle. Probably never will be. Likely will never be. Does it hurt or bother you that this group that's putting America first is now putting South Africans first, who, by the way, got there from where? Not America. They're actually Dutch, French, and German colonists. Make this one make sense to me. I feel like you can't just say, like, they're refugees, they need our help, because if that was the case, is it different because they're white? Just say that, then. Just say that.
Hey, get a load of this shit. 59 South Africans... 59 white South Africans were granted refugee status in the U.S. after their home country instituted a new law seeking to address land ownership disparities by making it easier for the country to expropriate land. Now, reportedly, 3/4 of privately owned land in South Africa is still in the hands of the white minority, even now, 30 years after apartheid ended. And if you don't know the history of South African apartheid, read a book. Google it even. It's not great. you're not in for a good time. So this law that South Africa introduced is supposed to allow South African authorities to take land in public interest without compensation, only in exceptional circumstances. That's what the law states. Like when an area is abandoned. After South Africa said they were going to institute that months ago, Trump posted on Truth Social and said that South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. The United States won't stand for it. We will act. Cool. Keep in mind that these certain classes of people he's referring to are white landowners. Elon Musk, who we haven't heard from in quite a while, is South African, if you didn't know. And he has and continues to refer to white people possibly losing land that they took as colonizers as a genocide. So that's fun. A claim that has actually been widely discredited multiple times. If you dig even just a little bit deeper, you will see why this, oh no, poor white colonists get expedited refugee status PR stunt is happening.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
What would it take for you to be convinced that there's no white genocide in South Africa?
Well, I can answer that for the president. It's for him. No, seriously. I'd rather have him answer. Yeah, I'd rather answer. It will be.
Our president will respond to you.
Yeah, let me,
Thank you, Mr. President.
It will take President Trump listening.
What?
Burial sites, over 1,000 of white farmers.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen. If there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture.
We have thousands of stories talking about it. Sure. And we have documentaries, we have news stories, and I could show you a couple of things. It has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure.
Excuse me, turn the lights down. Burial sites, over 1,000 of white farmers. Those people were all killed.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? No, I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen.
These are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death, death, death.
I'm sorry. I don't have a plane to give you. Now, the South African president visited the White House. They presented the South African president with a bunch of pictures and photographs and headlines and videos. Looked like they were drafted up by a kindergarten, somebody out of a kindergarten school, right? They're claiming that Afrikaners are being slaughtered in South Africa, and the South African president went to the White House and defended this claim, letting the world know that there's nobody getting slaughtered in South Africa, and the people who die in South Africa are not one specific color of people, but the people who are getting killed in South Africa involves all races of people, right? So, after being presented with a few photographs and a few pieces of paper, looked like they were scrapped or cut out by a scissor somewhere, right? Then they showed him some graves, the same graves you see circling around on TikTok, alleging that they're graves of white Afrikaner South African farmers who were killed in South Africa. A baseless argument. Now, the South African president has no idea, neither does the authorities in South Africa. They have no idea where these graves are located at. Nobody knows where they're located at. They're photocrap shit, cooked up, chumped up bullshit. And on top of that, they try to overtalk him so he wouldn't speak the truth. You understand? They try to overtalk the South African president, trying to overshadow the truth. You understand? And all trying to solicit airplanes as if they're dealing with Qatar. You think what I'm saying? This bullshit gotta stop. All these Afrikaners that came to the United States claiming they're refugees, it's a total lie. Everybody knows this.
Donald Trump seems to be on a mission to have ever-increasingly embarrassing meetings in the Oval Office. Most recently, he hosted the president of South Africa, who he looked in the face and told, "Your country has a white genocide." And the president was like, "Well, respectfully, no, that's not happening." And Donald Trump's like, "Yes, it is." And then he pulled out evidence, only that evidence has all been debunked. Like, he showed a video of all of these little white crosses along a roadway. And Donald Trump said, These are burial sites right here. And then he said, each one of these white things you see is a cross. There's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. Those people are all killed, Trump added. Yeah, so first of all, apparently people are just buried on top of each other along a roadway, by his logic. No, those are not burial sites, nor do they represent dead farmers, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can take the word of the man who put up those crosses. There were 2 farmers who were killed, and as part of a protest to that, they went along this roadway and put white crosses up that were then removed after the protest. They didn't represent individual people. It was just about these 2 people. Then Donald Trump showed a video where a person in a red beret repeatedly chants, "Kill the boer, kill the farmer," and speaks about taking land without compensation. That person is Julius Malema, who founded the small but radical party Economic Freedom Fighters after being expelled from the African National Congress, of which the president is a member. And after playing that video, the president explained to Donald Trump that does not represent the policies of this government. South Africa's opposition agriculture minister also said many parties had worked to keep extremists out of government. That guy and his group are extremists. They are not in power. And then Donald Trump pulled out a photo and he's like, "These are dead white people who were killed in the genocide." The picture he's showing is from the Congo, because Africa is a continent that has many countries within it. It wasn't in South Africa that happened. It was in the Congo. And in response, the president of South Africa, who had to sit there and be berated by a man who confidently declared things that were categorically false and used evidence that was inaccurate and not true, his only response he could really say was, "I'm sorry I don't have a plane to give you." Because apparently this administration, if you do something like gift them a plane, they forgive all kinds of terrible things. But today, my feed is full of conservative creators who all made the same video where they look at the camera and have music playing and they nod as text on the screen reads, "Donald Trump confronting the president of South Africa about the white genocide is exactly what I voted for." Is it? You voted for theatrics based on conspiracy theories that are false, using fake information? That's what you voted for?
Donald Trump made a complete fool of himself, or rather his staff made a complete fool of him, because they supplied him with material to display to the world's cameras, and not least the 1 billion people in Africa, a series of literal hoaxes. He showed a memorial which was composed of crosses, claiming these were the graves of white farmers. In fact, they were not graves. They were a memorial to all farmers, black and white, who have been killed over the period since the end of the Liberation War by all parties. That is to say, black farmers that have been killed by white farmers that have been killed by black farmers or other black people. Quite often their staff, their laborers, people that they ruled the roost over many years. It was a complete fiasco. Secondly, he held up pictures of a disaster area, of bodies destroyed, dead, and mutilated, which was not even from South Africa, let alone a depiction of anything remotely involving the deaths of white farmers. It was a scene from the Congo, from a disaster at a mine in the Congo, a completely different country, 1,000 kilometers or more away. Nothing to do with President Ramaphosa, nothing to do with the ANC, nothing to do with any of the political elements in South Africa. Thirdly, they showed a song being sung by someone who is President Ramaphosa's biggest enemy. He is the enemy of the ANC government in South Africa. It would be like holding against Donald Trump a song sung by an inveterate opponent of his in the United States. I don't know, a member of Black Lives Matter or a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Why is Trump responsible for that song? And why was Ramaphosa responsible for the song sung by Malema, the commander-in-chief of the Economic Freedom Fighter?
Is Trump trying to tell us that everything he has been doing is because he has seen videos of Julius Malema chanting, "Kill the boy"?
There is no genocide of white South Africans happening in South Africa, past, present, and these false claims have been pushed to the forefront of a narrative that's being created by this administration for several reasons. You say that if this were black people happening, then this wouldn't have been the story. Yeah, well, there's actual conflict in the Congo and in Sudan that actually we should be taking refugees from, but guess what? They're black. Since I mentioned the Congo, let's talk about the false narrative that Donald Trump presented with his proof, the evidence that these are burials of white South African farmers, and in reality, it was footage from humanitarian workers burying people in Congo from the conflict that is ongoing there. Secondly, in the around 20,000 deaths that are reported yearly in South Africa, around 50 happen to be white African farmers. Majority of the crime that happens to farmers in South Africa and total deaths in South Africa are black people. But we're not welcoming black South Africans, are we? No, we're welcoming the white ones who disproportionately own most of the land in South Africa. There's this clip of crosses that they keep putting online and saying, this represents all the white South African farmer deaths. In reality, this clip was shot in 2020, and it was a ceremonial thing to show the deaths that were occurring in South Africa in general across all groups of people, and it was an installation that was put up. And you see how propaganda can be used to make you leave this comment on my page to assume that white people are being persecuted in a country where they are actual invaders and settlers. And the actual people who are still at the behest of their persecution still exist, which is the overwhelming indigenous black South African population. Please do your research. It costs nothing to research anything that you see online. Any arbitrary information that's presenting you facts, just go research it. But this narrative that there are white people who are being persecuted in South Africa needs to go away.
We as South Africans, we know there's no white genocide, so for me it was a pointless exercise. I don't think it was the right call. South Africa is a country on its own. I don't think we need to explain ourselves to USA, to US. Whatever they think about South Africa, he should have just let it be. We know where we stand.
I think Donald Trump, he thinks is a leader of the whole world. So I think what he did, Ramaphosa, to prove them that we don't have no separation in this country. We believe as South African. That's why we call ourselves the Rainbow Nation.
Good morning. It's yet another beautiful day in South Africa. So we're waking up this morning to news that Donald Trump has decided that white Afrikaners are in so much danger here in South Africa that they actually need to be saved and given refugee status in the United States of America. This is great news. I mean, this is wonderful news. I mean, if I was going through white genocide, I'd be absolutely thrilled if a country as big as America came through and said, we're going to be saving your people. But funny enough, that's not the reaction. So a lot of white people are actually saying, no, that's not what we want. We just want to put pressure on the government so that they don't expropriate land that belongs to people who are actually here, and you took it from them and you made them your slaves, and you told them that there's places that they can't go to because they are black and you are white and you deserve privileges that they shouldn't get in their own country.
The Americans are saying that they are being embarrassed by their president, and he thinks that ruling America It's a reality show.
Those allegations were uncalled for. They are bullying the South Africans.
There's no mass expropriation of land taking place in South Africa. There's no genocide taking place.
Does he have all the statistics of the white farmers who have been killed?
We have crime issues, but as a government we have committed resources to deal with it.
There are no evidence to this thing. You don't just hear from one person and conclude.
The humiliation that he received from Donald Trump wasn't necessary.
This is not a genocide. What happened here? The farm murders, although a very high percentage per thousand, is not a genocide, and we have never claimed it to be.
We're not interested in going anywhere.
There is no genocide of white South Africans. And let me make this clear for the benefit of those of you who are not South Africans. I'm a white South African, but I'm not an Afrikaner. I'm not a Boer, as people say. But even the Afrikaner people, the vast majority of Afrikaners don't want to leave this country. All Afrikaners and white people have a very good life in South Africa. We are doing fine. Thank you very much. We do not need to leave, and we do not need refugee status from Trump. So, why has Trump decided to grant refugee status to a group of Afrikaners? Well, he likes keeping in the media, but I think that it really has more to do with his friend Elon Musk, who, remember, is a former South African. He has not been granted a license to operate his Starlink internet here in South Africa. And he has probably done this whole thing to provoke the bear, to create some kind of acrimonious situation and force the South African government to pay more attention to him. But let me just reiterate this. The group of South Africans who claim to be refugees from a white genocide, it's quite frankly an embarrassment.
I did my research and I found out how racist this new administration truly is. This is some of the most racist shit I've ever heard of. In 1913, South Africa had white supremacists running the country, and they created apartheid, which created segregation and discrimination laws against black South Africans. It was whites only South African businesses, whites only South African movie theaters, whites only South African swimming pools. South Africa was on that racist shit just like America treated black folks. So in 1913, white South Africans took over South Africa with force. White South Africans stole land owned by black South Africans. Fast forward to 2025. 3 of Trump's biggest supporters are 3 of the most richest men on the planet. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and David Sachs are 3 billionaires that fully support Trump. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and David Sachs are all white South Africans who were born in South Africa, white supremacy, and apartheid. Elon Musk is a white South African white supremacist. South Africa now has a black president. This South African president wants equality in South Africa. He wants the racism to stop, and he wants everyone to be treated equally. Trump and Elon Musk heard about this black South African president wanting equality. Trump immediately stopped all funding to South Africa. There are only 7% of white people in South Africa. But those white people own 70% of the land in South Africa because they stole most of that land from black South Africans. The new black South African president put a new law in place to right the wrongs that were done to black South Africans that had land stolen from them. Just like when European settlers stole America from the natives. Because the South African president wants to give back land that white South Africans stole from black South Africans, that's why Trump and his administration are saying white South Africans are being persecuted and done wrong. But white South Africans are not under persecution.
I mean, the facts are there is no systematic prosecution of white Afrikaner farmers. For the Trump administration to take the view that there's somehow systematic persecution, it's actually problematic and troublesome and damning on the way the Trump administration is receiving its information.
How are they being prosecuted when they the ones who stole the land from black South Africans? Black South Africans are the ones who originally owned that land. What's so wrong with doing right and giving black South Africans their land back. But see, this is the thing. South Africa is not even seizing land like Donald Trump is saying they are. It's a lawful process that's handled in the courts of South Africa. If someone stole land from you and your family, wouldn't you want it back?
We are not being persecuted. Most of us live a privileged life.
Y'all heard what the South Afrikaners said, right? About the refugees that came over here to America. He said that there is no genocide. No one is being persecuted. He said they actually live a privileged life. So why are they giving them refugee status? Clearly, it says that the Caucasoid South Africans are granted refugee status by Trump administration. And they have, of course, obviously arrived in the U.S. So what qualifies you for refugee status? Basically, they're saying you must live outside of your country because you fled, okay, for the whatever persecution was going on. Okay, well, we know they're actually originally from Europe, all of them. Wherever they are in the world, they're all originally from Europe, okay, the Caucasus Mountains. So they're actually there in South Africa. They were flown out from South Africa. So they weren't outside of their country of nationality, which they're considered to be South Africans, right? And then also another stipulation is that there has to have been past persecution as well as well-founded fear of persecution. Child, we all know that they're the ones that are persecuting everybody, okay? They done gone around the world persecuting everybody that looks like us and stealing our land, giving us guys that don't look like us and all that. Y'all know that. Y'all already know. It's not us. We are the victims. We are their victims, okay? So if they're not really truly refugees, they were flown out from South Africa, why are they here? That goes back to the video I just did a couple days ago, saying that they are gathering people to further push us off our land. We know about the Indian removals, how they have basically stripped us off of our land. They've pushed us further and further off our land. This is the last hurrah to get us the F off of our own land.
I don't give a fuck what y'all saying at all. Y'all don't know shit.
So I grew up in apartheid South Africa as a English-speaking white boy. I only became politically conscious when I was already 18 years of age, because prior to that, I had been subjected to and sucked in this incredible propaganda of victimization of the white people, where every piece of news, every message we were getting, every joke, the butt of every joke was the stupidity of the black man, the inability of the black man to look after himself, never mind the country, to be ignorant, uneducated, break everything he touched. The messaging was that all violence was black violence, that all crime was black crime, that you had to fear black people. And a huge amount of that fear was that if we let them into the political process, into the governance of the country, that they would do to us exactly what we had done to them for decades, which would be to turn around and oppress us, to murder us, to take our stuff, to move into our houses. It was a very popular story that the ANC, prior to the 94 election, when it was still an illegal organization and Nelson Mandela was still in jail, and the armed wing was exiled to Zambia and Mozambique, Umkhonto weZizwe, was that they promised all of our domestic servants that those servants would be given the house they worked in when the ANC ruled. And these stories were told amongst the whites to bolster our resolve never to let these black people run our country. And it was only when I became conscious of that from 18 onwards that I realized not only was this a terrible lie that was actually oppressing us as well as the people that we as a white nation, white minority, were oppressing, but that actually what happened subsequently from 1994 onwards was far more of a reflection of the nature of black South Africans than any fears we as white South Africans had been fed and believed.
No, I mean, I feel like everyone should know this, but apartheid was basically a system of laws in South Africa, a system of laws that were designed to oppress people of color and all people of color. Apartheid made it illegal for black and white people to interact with one another, my parents included. You know, at the time when they were a couple, it was against the law. Me being born was against the law.
It's a crime for him to be here.
Yeah, my dad couldn't be on my birth certificate. My parents couldn't have me on the, like, you had to have a registry of all the people that lived in your house at the time. My grandmother couldn't have that in her house. But I think most importantly, the thing a lot of people don't realize is apartheid essentially was perfect racism. You know, like I'm still learning about how perfect the system was in terms of, like, they went around the world. The government actually set up a commission to go around the world and study racism. And America was one of the places they came. They went to Australia, they went to the Netherlands, they came to America, and they were like, what is the racism here? How does the state oppress people of color? What can we use from the system to take home?
This video is for the white Afrikaners who are coming to the United States. I think you've already landed here. And I know that some of the folks who met you at the airport told you, welcome, we're so glad you're here. Most of us aren't glad you're here, okay? We don't want you here. We never wanted you here. And furthermore, I noticed they're gonna settle you in Idaho, Ohio, and North Carolina. I will tell you they're not our finest states, so they're a good fit for you. I understand that many of you are farmers, and I've seen a lot of people say, oh, that's great, we need more farmers. Sorry to say we don't. We actually need farm workers because we've deported most of them. So if you can, you know, put your picking hat on and think about, you know, picking produce, that's largely probably what you're going to be doing here, because I hear you don't have a lot of skills. I would also say that you're not going to have to hold just one job, but probably 2 or 3 to make up for your quality of life that you had back in South Africa. There'll be no servants working for $2 a day. There's none of that here. So you're the servant who's working for $2 a day. So enjoy that. You're gonna have to pay for your health care, and ordinarily, because you're a refugee who's being discriminated against, you would go on Medicaid. But guess what? The Republicans just cut Medicaid. So I don't think you're going to have that option for healthcare. So maybe you'll do without. I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. I did notice that the Episcopalian Church had a program with the government where they would, excuse me, they would resettle and help, you know, refugees resettle. They find you all to be so onerous, they terminated the partnership with the government. And they said, yeah, we won't be resettling those folks. Other things that you need to know about. While we are 58% white here in the United States, that's not going to last much longer. Within the next couple of years, we're going to be the minority, which will be fun for you because that's what you're used to. Interestingly enough, we have a ton of Latinos. We're the 2nd largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. So for you, if you could stop speaking that dirty, guttural, whatever it is, German, French, Dutch thing that you speak, that Afrikaans, nobody wants to hear that shit. So you can speak English or you can speak Spanish, which is really the 2nd language here. In terms of other things that you need to know about, the black people in this country, they don't get fucked with, okay? I know that there's a long legacy of colonialism and all kinds of stuff happening in your country, but our black folks have sort of been through the fire, if you will, and they're not going to be fucked with. So you're the minority here. Enjoy. I really hope you like your time here. I'm going to bet my ass that you're going to be booking it back to SA probably within the next 12 months. Have a great day.
And people are talking about the Afrikaners are coming from South Africa. They're going to bring them over here. And some people have been trying to scare us with that. Like, oh, those racist Afrikaners from South Africa, they going to be coming to the U.S. Well, see, y'all should have voted for Kamala. Ooh, uh-oh. Now them real racists about to come over now. Family, do we look like we're worried about some white Afrikaners from South Africa? Family, do you think that's a problem for us? You need to be warning them not to come over here with that bullshit. The warning should be to them. Hey, I love my South African brothers and sisters. I love them. I have a lot of love for my South African brothers and sisters. Foundation of Black Americans, we ain't like the South Africans. No disrespect. Y'all my brothers. I love y'all over there. I'm not saying that to disrespect y'all, but yeah, they're not going to come. They better not come over here thinking that they're going to roll up on us like they do over there. No disrespect. I'm really not trying to disrespect the family there. Man, we ain't like that now. We don't play those kind of games. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. You better let them know. You see? We're not worried about that at all. They better find somebody to play with. They come over here messing, running up on some FBAs, they'll be right back over there in South Africa, hiding behind an elephant. Yeah, we're not worried about that. Yeah? And again, I'm not disrespecting my South African brothers and sisters. I got love for you guys. I got love for you. But yeah, we're a little bit different over here. Yeah, we don't play those kind of games. Yeah? at all. That's the least of our worries.
Is there a white genocide in South Africa?
No, there's no sign of it, never has been. In fact, whites are economically the strongest group. They benefited from democracy more than anybody else. 64% of all boardrooms in South Africa are still white. The average income of white South Africans are vastly higher than black South Africans. No. They have better schools, they have better education, they have private health care. This is the land of milk and honey if you're white.
Has any land been expropriated in South Africa without compensation since the first all-race election in this country?
I'm not aware of anyone. Not a single farm that I'm aware of was expropriated without compensation since 1994.
So how do we interpret President Trump's executive order?
It is possible that South Africa has offended the United States with his policy on the Palestinians, and it could be that with his policy on Russia, the ambiguities of those policies and its relationship with the Chinese. It could be. I think that does play a role. But there was something very, very sensitive that was touched upon. And in South Africa, right-wing groups, so-called civil society groups, we know that they have access to the Trump administration because they claim that. And if you listen to what Trump has said, it corresponds exactly with the genocide narrative that they sell and that they market, and that whites are victims of the democratic system and the constitution of South African legislation. So there's an overlay, there's an immediate overlay, it's an unquestionable overlay between what Trump says and these right-wing groups have said. So I'm afraid I have to believe them when they say they have direct access to the Trump administration, and we see it in what Trump has been doing.
I see everybody talking about Trump bringing in the refugees from South Africa. And I literally made a video about this months ago because I already know what's really happening there. So I'm going to try to explain why Trump is bringing them back, although he's deporting other people out. So check it. Y'all remember all the fraud those been recovering, right? Specifically from the DEI. What happened was the demon rats literally paid, quote unquote, white Americans to move down to South Africa. Because just in case y'all haven't realized, South Africa has been colonized. And I always bring it up because if you just look at the presidents by itself, it'll tell you enough. But anyways, they got to a point to where they started making white-only communities. And that's when, you know what I'm saying, they crossed the line. So basically, the South Africans started to fight back. They started to off these people, as they should, because they're trying to colonize them, just like they did here in America. But again, like I said, this was all from the demon rats because they're literally paying people to go to other countries to take over, just like they pay people to come here to America to take over. So to keep this simple, Trump feels as though this is the quote-unquote the United States' fault that they're even there in South Africa to begin with. Because when he first tried to get them out, they did not want to leave because they did not understand they was getting paid fraudulent funds. So once they started cutting all the DEI and all the fraudulent funds that Doge did, right? They stopped getting their checks. They started going broke, so they had no choice but to come back or get off by the locals. So all that other bullshit y'all hearing from everybody else online, all they doing is trying to rage bait you when this is the actual truth, because I literally made a video on this months ago. Because like I said, I already know what's happening. It's actually a good thing for South Africa. And if they here, they got to follow the new system that they're creating. All in order so this shit don't happen again. That's why he's sending people back. So if anybody comes to America, they got to do it the right way so the Americans don't have to pay their bill. And as y'all should know by now, we've literally been paying the bills for the whole world. And that is why we've been struggling here in America. Anyways, y'all know how to keep it. Y'all be gods. Peace.
So I just saw this video of the white South Africans, or the Afrikaners, coming over here and saying that we have to work from the bottom. What the fuck is going on? From the bottom? Not only you getting food assistance, not only you getting money assistance, not only you getting housing assistance, all right? You getting green card assistance. What do you mean you starting from the bottom? I know a family from Guatemala, the mom and dad came over here to America when they were in their 20s, and they stayed over here low-key under the radar until their son that was born on American soil turned 18. Do you understand what that is? That's starting from the bottom.
You've raped, pillaged, and deprived South Africa of almost all of its land and natural resources, killed millions for centuries now, and stole the land with no compensation. Yet you're out here intoxicated with hubris to claim genocide of the white man? It takes a special kind of fool to go along with such an idiotic attempt at propaganda. Tell me, who in the world is dumb enough to believe a lie of such low intellectual fortitude and breathtakingly stupid ineptitude? This must be some type of unorganized, planned Klan comedy skit of some sort, because this kind of stupidity doesn't just fester and metastasize into this vile, malignant disease to rot brains overnight. Only, and I do mean only, a special kind of fool would ever be naive enough to believe something that low on the totem pole of actual intelligence. Just another vile attempt at idiotic caucasity.
All right, rant of the day. These South Afrikaners that are coming in, I think 49 came in the other day. They are part of the little apartheid movement that collapsed in 1994. There's no targeted killing. There's no targeted genocide. South African government has strictly denied it. They are strictly saying, you're going off misinformation. You're going off of information from Elon. You're going off of information that is racist. Like, it's racist. The fact that you are terrorizing people in this country now that have lived here their whole life, that story about that 19-year-old that made a wrong turn, it's truly disgusting. All the while you're trying to end habeas corpus, end due process, all this shit. Fuck this administration. Fuck this racist bullshit. It is unfathomable that they're bringing in fucking white racists now. We are importing racism. We already have enough.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this video entertaining and you received any kind of enjoyment from watching it, please subscribe, share it with others, hit that notification bell, and most importantly, don't forget to smash that like button and leave a comment. It truly makes a difference. YouTube's algorithms thrive on engagement, and your support ensures these videos reach a wider audience. It's worth mentioning that YouTube doesn't directly compensate creators like me for content, so if you'd like to support the channel, consider making a donation through the Cash App provided above. Your donations will go towards me having the time to create more videos for your enjoyment. Now, with all that being said, peace, and thank you for being a part of the Surviving the Phuckery community.